This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglan.
Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. We talk about at least three of these things as we page through the 2017 Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide, the Bible, if you will, of what thousands of people do across the state for fun, fishing and boating. And if that's not what you do, it still might help you understand how we manage fish. We go inside outdoors also with a look at Arbor Day, our first show of spring, next on Kentucky Afield Radio.
I didn't know when I woke up that morning that birds would stop singing or the sun would stop shining.
Alex Audie, 13-year-old survivor of a collision with a drunk boater.
No one told me because they didn't know themselves. Blindsided, my legs were shattered, it broke my neck, I lost my leg, and I almost lost my life.
Lake Harrington, Kentucky.
It's illegal to drink in public, and Kentucky waterways are public.
When we arrived on the location, there were still beer cans floating on the water.
Contrary to popular belief, beer and boating don't go hand in hand.
Her personal watercraft was in shambles, and a bass boat was flipped on its top.
By all accounts, I shouldn't be here. But before that first scream or the care of the first responders, the first thing that saved my life was my life jacket.
Life jackets.
They're like little angels. They lift you up.
Kentucky Boating and Conservation Officers remind you.
Your life jacket's got your back.
Welcome to Kentucky Afield Radio. This is our first show of spring, 2017. Have any spring projects in the offing? Instruction manuals. How to install a light switch. How to plant potatoes. How to extend the life of your tires. If you've done it once, chances are you can do it for the rest of your life. Like riding a bike. But not everything is that simple, even though it seems like it should be. Today, we take a look at how all of this applies to one of Kentucky's favorite sports, fishing. Fishing and boating, actually. It's easy to catch a bluegill, but how do the official regulations play into what you can take home? Lee McClellan knows these things. And he should, because he's the editor of the annual Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide. And each year there are a few changes that you see printed in blue ink. If it's new, it's in blue. We wanted to have Lee on earlier, but we could not. We needed a reschedule due to a family loss, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Meanwhile, Lee McClellan, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here.
One thing I like about radio, especially today, long-form radio.
Yep.
Get to take your time, probe into a subject instead of short form, where it's about a minute or a minute and a half, and you get to hear a news story and you're done. But today, we get to take the time to talk about things that are important.
Yes.
Like dogs. Tell me about your dog.
Well, she passed last week.
What was her name?
Tilly.
How old was that
She was only 8.5.
That's young for a doggy.
Yeah, I know.
What kind of dog?
Golden Doodle.
A golden doodle. I've heard them called labradoodles.
Yeah, that's different. This is Golden Retriever and Poodle.
How big a dog is that?
She was about 65 pounds.
That's a pretty big dog.
Yeah, she was a big dog. Long dog.
Water dog. Yeah. I can see that dog jumping in a pond right now.
Mm-hmm. She was very kind. Really sweet disposition.
8.5 years to have a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Did she go fishing with you?
No, she hated traveling. She liked her own little bubble. She liked being at home. She couldn't stand the car.
So you have two dogs?
Yeah, well, now one. Yeah.
Now one.
Mm-hmm.
How old's the other dog?
She's the same age. Belle is a Llewellyn Setter lab mix.
Well, we'll dedicate today's show to Tilly.
No, I appreciate it.
There's nothing better than a dog. I mean, if you've heard the show, Lee, you've heard me. It's been probably a couple of years. I used to close the show with good dog stories.
Mm-hmm.
How dogs would come to the rescue, and cats that like dogs. If you don't have a pet, you're missing out. Of course, you don't have to feed them. You don't have to take them to the vet. There's a lot of things you don't have to do.
Mm-hmm.
The instant you commit to having a pet, you have instantly set yourself up for the worst heartbreak there could ever be.
True.
You get them, you love them like kids, you take them into your home, they're a part of your birthdays and Christmas and your everyday life. They look to you for everything, food, water, shelter, health, and then they're gone.
I know.
You know that you're going to outlive the pet. Maybe we should start getting turtles as pets. Have you seen the movie that was out recently, A Dog's Purpose?
No, I haven't.
It's good. It's well worth seeing. Pam and I went to see that. And then I remember way back 1990, it was a Disney movie called All Dogs Go to Heaven.
I remember that one.
But if either of those movies are true, then I have a feeling you'll see Tilly again.
I hope so. She was a wonderful companion. Great dog.
Well, we have 2 kids on the front of this fishing guide today. They have pet fish.
Yep, they do. Pet fish are going to be dinner.
They've got their limit here, obviously.
Yeah, well, catfish are, no minimum except on Finn's lakes. They were okay.
Of course, they're young enough. They don't even need a fishing license yet.
Nope. Those are a nice string of fish, though, isn't it? It's a great picture.
They did well. This is a guide they're going to keep forever.
Oh, no doubt.
They're going to be autographing this, I guarantee you. You could have an autograph signing. You could have a fishing derby at Fish and Wildlife Headquarters, have these 2 kids autographing the guide. I guarantee you you would have a long line.
Yeah, you would.
That would be cool.
It's a wonderful photo.
So on the front page, you got these kids. They've caught their limit, and kids don't need a license. That's one thing that's pointed out in the guide. So they're not quite, I'm going to guess they're about 8 or 9 or so years old. So to fish in Kentucky, what age do you actually start needing that license?
16.
Yeah, they got a ways to go.
Yeah, they're good.
The FINS program, we're going to talk about what's new and updated, what's new is in blue. The FINS program we're going to get into a little bit later with some new lakes that are in that program. But one thing I thought was interesting, that trout are in those lakes. And if you keep the trout, you also need a permit. What's the thinking behind that?
It pays for the program.
That makes sense.
Yes. I mean, it's a user pay, user use program, And
the trout's an easily caught fish.
Yes, it is. Especially these hatchery-raised trout. They can be really easy to catch.
That's great. The last thing you want to do is go fishing, not catch anything. Then, you're 8 years old, you're disappointed. So heck with that, I'm going to do something else. You want to have some success, and trout help that to happen.
No doubt.
So the fishing and boating guide. How many years have you been doing this now, Lee?
17.
17? You've been here for 17 years.
Sure have.
So you inherited that as part of the job? Or
Yes. Yeah.
I had no idea it had been that long. Is the boating and fishing guide the same number of pages year to year?
Yes. It has been for a while. We've cut it in a couple of years ago. We cut back, saved a little bit on printing costs, and we went through and eliminated redundancies and things of that nature. But it runs the same every year.
With the advent of smartphones, is the circulation of this dropped a little bit with people just being able to look at it on a tablet?
I believe that it has, but there's still great demand for the paper version.
These are the best things. I've got one in my hand to swat a fly with.
No doubt.
Swat a dog.
And you can put it in your tackle box, and if it gets wet, so what? Dry it out and reuse it.
Yeah.
If that happens to your smartphone, you're out who knows how much,
That's true. If you don't have one,
I was on Green River with a farmer, and he dropped his phone right in front of me filming the show. He turned white as a sheet. I saw it go bloop, it was in 3 feet of water. I was like, uh-oh.
That's not funny, but it's funny.
Yeah.
You've got it pointed out in here, and this is one thing I thought it was interesting, that, I don't know, without having to find this verbatim, it basically says, these are the rules, but then it's not statute. What's that mean? Is it sort of like you've taken this fishing guide and put statutes into English? Yes.
And like, say, special fishing regulations, it has all the KAR and KRS that it refers to. Anytime we have a new section like that, we always try to put what the statutory framework is of the regs. So people want to look it up like bullfrogs. That's 301 KAR 0182. Grass carp prohibited, 301 KAR 1.201. So we always try to put that in there so people can look up the regulation themselves if they so desire.
Is the verbiage going to be that much different? I wonder why the guide and the reg can't be exactly the same. That's Frankfurt for you.
Yeah.
So page 2, Lee McClellan, if it's new, it is in blue.
Yep.
We have a few changes this year. Have there ever been, or has there ever been, what is it about nature and water and fish that you can't have the same rules consistently year after year. It seems like every year there's a little tweak.
Well, that's part of the management process. Each year the biologists go out and look at species, monitor their health, and if there's something they feel is out of whack or needs improvement, then they'll address it through regulation.
We will pick up there. If it's new, it's in blue, the brand new Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide. It's free wherever you buy your fishing license, and it's online at fw.ky.gov. What's changed for this year? We'll learn more after the break. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. We are back on Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglan. So page 2, Lee McClellan, if it's new, it is in blue.
Yep.
We have a few changes this year. What is it about nature and water and fish that you can't have the same rules consistently year after year? It seems like every year there's a little tweak.
Well, that's part of the management process. Each year the biologists go out and look at species, monitor their health, and if there's something they feel is out of whack or needs improvement, then they'll address it through regulation. Like yellow bass, daily creel limit on yellow bass is now pretty much a rough fish. You can keep as many as you want. Trammell Creek, some people came forward and wanted to lower the daily creel on rainbow so they'll have a little bit more opportunity there.
The creel limits, that's a term we hear every day.
Mm-hmm.
What's it mean?
Your daily creel is how many you can keep per day.
And your possession limit is how many you can have with you or on a stringer?
Yeah, unprocessed fish in your possession. See, a lot of people for a long time thought they went to Kentucky Lake and they fished for 5 days and they thought they can only keep, because the possessions double the daily creel. They thought, well, if I go down there for 5 days crappie fishing, I can only keep 2 limits. Well, no, you have to process your fish and commit them to your domicile, whether it be the lodge or whether it be a cabin or a house or whatever, wherever you're staying. You just can't have more than 2 creel limits of unprocessed fish. My understanding was possession goes back to the days when people did a lot more boat-in camping and shoreline camping and didn't have the resources we have now as far as refrigeration and things. And people wouldn't process their fish, and they'd let them sit there 2 and 3 days, and by the time they got around to them, they were worthless. Mm-hmm. So this was a way to get rid of wanton waste, because I know one particular story was told to me that, that a lot of people were just disgusted. They'd come to a camping site and there'd be 50 dead crappie floating, because they didn't process them.
Right.
And they got rigor mortis and the stomach intestine juices got in the meat and the fish became spoiled. So this is a way to make sure people process their fish in a timely manner and not waste.
One thing I've noticed about fishing in Kentucky, every body of water is sort of managed on its own. Mm-hmm. Yet across the board, yellow bass were now said to be a rough fish, and we'll just have no creel limit whatsoever on it. Yeah,
we had a minimum. They were part of the white bass and hybrid daily. They just wanted to separate those out because they're plentiful. People can catch a lot of them. There are just so many they didn't feel it's necessary to group them in with the white bass, the hybrids, or the striper deal. But it's mainly white bass and hybrid. Whites and hybrids are the ones that we have that were all together. Yellow bass used to be in that group.
Well, of course, this is subject to change. Mm-hmm. I guess it could.
Yes, it could. Well, not too many lakes have yellow bass, but the ones have a lot of them. Like Kentucky Lake has a lot of yellow bass.
And so with the absence of a creel limit, then we could see more of them harvested.
Yes.
And if a number drops, then maybe they have to change the regulation then, too.
I believe the feeling is that probably won't happen because most people don't target them. And to watch, if you ever catch yellow bass, watch handling them. They're sharp. Man, they will light you up. Their fins are very sharp, so just be careful in handling them. They taste fantastic.
Talking about Kentucky Lake, had a fellow just a while ago on Facebook talking about Asian carp. What have you put in this fishing guide about Asian carp?
Well, there's a page on Asian carp also in our live bait for personal use. We ask people that if you collect bait from a reservoir or water body, you must use that bait in that reservoir or water body. Shad and Asian carp have a very distinct or very similar look to them when they're at a certain age. Yeah. So it's very difficult for an average person to differentiate between a shad and a baby Asian carp. So we didn't want to spread those any more than are already being doing by their natural process. So we ask if you collect bait, like say in Barkley tailwater, use that bait in that system. But don't bring it to another water body.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. If it's new, it's in blue, and it's part of the Fishing and Boating Guide for Kentucky this year. Mm-hmm. You have some blue ink here on Trammell Creek in Allen County, dealing with rainbow trout. Elaborate, please.
Well, that's, as a minute ago, they wanted to have, I believe it used to be under statewide reg of 8, and they wanted to lower that to 5 so more people could get more use out of that. That's an unusual fishery. It's a spring-fed. Most of Trammell Creek is smallmouth bass, but this particular stretch, some springs come in of very cold water, makes them amenable to trout. And they've been stocked down there for as long as I can remember.
So this is a year-round fishery, it sounds like.
Yes, and it's a catch and release. It's our seasonal catch and release from October to March 31. But during the rest of the year, when harvest is allowed, they wanted to lower that rainbow creel to 5 because they're getting some pretty good holdovers and some big fish in there, and they wanted to keep that up.
There is a spring-fed creek that has a trout fishery in it in western Kentucky, and I can't remember the name of it.
For a while, we did Whippoorwill Creek, I believe. Casey Creek in Trigg County.
That's it. That's the one I'm thinking about.
It's also under seasonal catch and release regulations.
I saw this on page 4. I'm going to turn the page here. This is one of the sweetest things on the Internet. It ranks right up there in my book with the Fish and Wildlife site, My Profile option, where you put in your Social Security number and see everything you've done, your harvest logs, and the licenses you have bought. This find a place to fish.
Fantastic.
Option.
I use it all the time.
It's incredible. I bet you had a hand in its development, didn't you?
Well, Don Bonnell and them did. I wish I could take credit, but I'm not going to. I've ground-proofed quite a few of them during my Blue Water Trail series. I know Don has done a lot with it, Don Bonnell, and some of the other guys have helped. When they find new access, we put it on there. But it is a wonderful resource.
All right, let's define it a little bit. You can search by species, by body of water, by
county, by city, by species, by access type as well.
Yeah. If you want to catch bass wherever and you put that in there, it's amazing what you can learn. You can just sit there. I found myself playing with that.
I know, me too.
And 20 minutes later, I said, I better quit. And it's a fantastic resource.
It really is. If you open up our homepage, on the left box there, you'll see Find a Place to Fish. Click on that, it goes right to it.
You'll be on there. It's just like going on Amazon. You can't quit. You're the state record fish coordinator still, right? There's been 17 years on that. How long have you been? It's 17. Did that come as part of this writing job for the magazine?
It sure did.
Did it really? The state record fish program. What's the latest record set?
The white catfish over in Gist Creek.
How big?
It was in the last magazine. I want to say it was just right at 4 pounds. I got another one in from West Kentucky, but I think it was silver carp. But I just got that like 2 days ago. So,
what do you think the next to fall? What do you expect?
Brook trout in the Cumberland River. That's been falling every spring for the past couple of years.
Advice to anglers if they think they may have caught a state record?
First thing they need to do is contact their district fisheries biologist and make sure the fish is confirmed by them. Then nothing else can transpire until that happens. Then it has to be weighed on a scale certified for trade by the Department of Agriculture, such as anybody sells meat or seed or anything like that by the pound. A lot of people go to southern states, or some people go to grocery stores. Any place that sells meat by the pound will allow you to weigh the fish. It has to be certified for trade by the Department of Agriculture. It has to be caught on hook and line from Kentucky waters.
Years ago, Kerry Prather, who was a retired fisheries biologist, was on, and he said, I asked him about basically the same question, and he said, the thing about catching a state record is you have to recognize the fish for what it is. If it's so big, it may be so big that you don't recognize the fish as a bluegill or as a bass. Run into that yourself?
A few times. Had people make mistakes on weighing it. Some things of that nature, where people are like, what have I caught? And then they find out, the state record crappie is actually a hybrid of white and black crappie. It's from a watershed lake out in Hopkins County. It's a monster. But they did genetic testing on it as a hybrid. That
has to be the funnest job that there could be in state government. The state record fish program. And that's just maybe 2 hours a week for you or what?
Well, maybe that a year,
Really?
Yeah. Depends. Some years we can go years without having a record. So
it's a pretty good place to segue into what constitutes legal fishing in this state. Equipment-wise, what's legal? Nets, snagging, bow fishing. How can you legally fish?
Well, use a rod and reel. But you can also snag, but snagging rules are very strict. You need to consult our gigging and snagging section. We've had several regulatory changes over the past 10 years in that regard. There's certain areas of the state where that's very popular, but also there's certain areas of the state where we're trying to keep the paddlefish populations high. So a lot of people have snagged paddlefish. Their roe is worth a lot of money. We have to balance the interests of our constituents and the people who pay the freight versus the needs of maintaining a vigorous fishery. So that's why the gigging and snagging rules have changed somewhat.
What about jug fishing, trot lines? Can you catch a record fish by jug fishing?
For a state record, fish must be caught in Kentucky waters by a rod and reel or pole and line only.
Okay, so no trot lines.
Well, fish taken on commercial gill by trot lines, gigging, snagging, or by hand or bow fishing are not eligible. You can't noodle, rod and reel, or pole and line only. So I guess jugs would be illegal. That's a good question. I'm going to put that in our next Woods and Water quiz for this spring in the magazine. That's
there you go.
Good question. But I do know that trot lines, gigging, snagging, tickling, or noodling, or bow fishing are not eligible. However, there is a separate UBK, United Bowhunters of Kentucky, keeps a separate Kentucky bow fishing records. But they keep the records. You have to go through them, not us. We help them, and we put a link on there to them in the magazine, or in the fishing guide, rather. If you shoot a record, you'll need to consult the United Bowhunters of Kentucky. There's an excellent entry on their website that'll tell you all the information you need to know.
Lee, we need to take a break. We'll have more as we page through the all-new and improved Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide with editor Lee McClellan. There are a few regulation changes this year you should know, plus our fishing report is standing by. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. Baglan back on Kentucky Afield Radio. We're into our second half hour. If you would like to hear this show again, you can find the link on our Facebook page. Just put in Kentucky Afield Radio in the search box. There you are. You can like us. Find us on YouTube as well. Just put Kentucky Afield Radio in the search box. Plus, we're a weekly podcast. Take a look for us on iTunes. Easy as that. It's time now for our fishing report.
In western Kentucky, down in Kentucky and Barkley Lakes, it seems like it's getting to be that time. The crappie have been biting for the last month or so with all this beautiful weather we've had, and I expect that to continue. Really good year classes of crappie coming on, a lot of keeper fish in the lake. And how they're being caught right now, they're spider rigging with jigs, but as the water warms up, they'll move shallow, and that's when you can start fishing with jigs around your buttonball bushes and up around the shallow water habitat. Bass fishing's been pretty warm too. Not hot, but warm. The bass are still out there suspended off of secondary points and ledges, but expect them to start moving up as the water continues to warm up this spring. Tailwaters have been pretty good with white bass, striped bass, and hybrids. Good discharge, and so fishing's been good. Well, this is Paul Reister, and I hope you find a good day to go fishing.
This is Jeff Crosby with the Central Fishing Report. Fishing across the area is good right now. Water temperatures are running in the low 50s. Largemouth bass. This is a great time of year to pick up a really nice fish as large females move into shallow water preparing for the spawn. Check out Taylorsville, Harrington, or even Gifts Creek or Kincaid Lake up in Falmouth is great lakes to catch quality-sized fish this time of year. Cast jigs or plastic baits or jerk baits, crankbaits, or spinner baits along points that are adjacent to spawning flats. And finally, don't forget about a fishing in neighborhoods lake close to you. They've been stocked with channel catfish and rainbow trout. Check out the department's website at fw.ky.gov for further information. Grab a pole and enjoy some great spring fishing. Hope to see you on the water.
Derek Cummins with your Southwest Kentucky Fishing Report. Barren River Lake is over halfway back to summer pool, and bass have been good with spinnerbaits, shallow crankbaits up on the slabs near cover structure. Crappie still best on structure cover near the channel and 8 to 12 foot of water. Green River Lake is also just a little bit shy of summer pool. Muskie have been up shallow in the stained water in the upper quarters of the lake and have been good with jerkbaits, lipless cranks, and spinners. Crappie green have been good on brush and structure in 10 to 14 foot of water. Also small impoundment and farm ponds, good places for some bass action with spinner baits, beetle spins, and shallow crankbaits. Good luck and good fishing. Be sure your life jacket's got your back.
Hunting elk in Kentucky is a dream come true for many, and I want to add my name to that list.
And I want to add mine.
If you want to add yours,
the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife website is Elk Central. The Pick 4 option lets you put your name in the hat for cow, bull, archery, or firearm.
Plus youth tags.
The deadline is midnight, April 30th.
This could be my year.
And it could be yours.
Register for incredible Kentucky elk hunting at fw.ky.gov.
Stretch!
It's not easy reaching your arms around a giant white oak tree.
Mom, I can't reach your hand.
It's not easy finding one either, but old-growth woodlands are another example of what Kentucky Nature license plates work to protect.
Big tree.
And even though this boy's in 5th grade, he might see college before those fingertips meet. And with some of these trees, he may still need a little help from his sister.
Oh, brother.
Kentucky Nature plates. No wonder they say nature's finest. Baglan back in our second half hour. We're talking about If It's New, It's in Blue in the Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide 2017 edition. Lee McClellan is the editor, and he's ours for the hour. Ballard Wildlife Management Area in Ballard County, that's about as far western Kentucky as you can get.
Yep.
Idle speed only now on boats and lakes and the sloughs there. That makes a lot of sense to me. There's so many snags out there. And
stumps.
Yeah, tupelo trees.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could go any faster than that if you tried.
Trying to standardize everything out there for idle speed only for all boats. You know, we had that 10 horsepower or less rule. Let's look at boating real quick. All these are on page, I think, 31. As you can see, some of the idle speed only. We still have boat motors larger than 10 horsepower must operate at idle speed at all times on Beaver, Bullet Pen, Corinth. See, for a long time, if you had a boat larger than 10 horsepower, I think you had to use your trolling motor only on those lakes. But we changed quite a few of those in the last couple of years. Because some people who are, I don't have a 10 horse, what am I going to do? I'd like to be able to fish beaver with my 18-foot bass boat, but I'm just going to go idle speed only. A lot of constituents came forward and said that's what they'd like.
Well, that sounds fair.
Yeah. There was some people that didn't particularly care for that. But overall, we've come to that regulation there.
That applies also to Boat Right Wildlife Management Area, and I guess whatever bodies of water is on that property.
Part of the deal was, people in bigger boats, like by the time I get halfway across the lake, my trolling motor is, after fishing 6 hours, my trolling motor's kind of dying down. Yeah. That's the compromise we came to.
As the editor of this, Lee, I'm sure you've had a hand in this. The little tidbits of information that are just scattered all over this guide. You can just spend a half hour reading these and come away with, I didn't know that. I'm glad I read that. And one of them that I guess I just hadn't given any thought to was the little tidbit on Q&A. Can you clean fish on the water? And you can't.
No.
I guess I'd not given any thought to that.
The officer needs to be able to identify what you caught. So if you have fillets, well, how's he going to know that's a bluegill from a crappie from a whatever?
Well, that makes sense.
So, that way to make sure everybody's on the up and up.
Does litter, the tail, the fins, the heads, just as trash? That doesn't look good floating around that whole
No,
lake
it doesn't.
Anyway.
No, it's more of a compliance issue.
Idle speed only now on Beulah Lake, Jackson County. Oh, I see here that there are several, and they're all pointed out here in the Fishing and Boating Guide, several new lakes now in the FINS program, acronym for Fishing in Neighborhoods. Tell me what these lakes are, and maybe you want to comment on them. I'm sure you fished them.
A lot of these I have not fished, I'll be honest. I do know the FINS program. My brother takes his kids to them quite a bit at Millennial Park Pond in Danville. And they love it because they catch fish the whole time. And that's kind of the goal of the program, is for you to come and catch fish the whole time. We also added Madisonville City Park South, are all in the Fishing in Neighborhoods program. And we took Dixon Lake and Marion County Lake, or Martin County Lake, are no longer enrolled.
Let me go down this list. Penny Ryle Lake, that's in Christian County. Largemouth bass are now under a statewide regulation. Flemingsburg Old Reservoir, that's in Fleming County. That's new to the FINS program.
Cass Creek Park Lake.
Graves County. Leary Lake in Grant County. Logan Hubble Park, Lincoln County. Madisonville City Park Lake South in Hopkins County. Rotary Park Lake, Hickman County. They are now enrolled in the FINS program. Is that program, what is that, around 45 lakes or so now in the FINS program? Was that close?
Yeah, you're close.
Will that ever top out? Is there a maximum you think you can reasonably have?
My understanding is we've about reached the carrying capacity of what we can do as far as space in the hatchery. It's all dependent upon making the fish. So, we're fairly close to reaching carrying capacity, but I don't think we're all the way there.
Yeah, a hatchery can only produce so many
fish. Yeah.
Now, a couple of them you mentioned did drop out of the program. Dickerson Lake and Fort Knox, that's in Meade County, and Martin County Lake, they're no longer enrolled. What causes a lake to have to drop out of the program?
I know in one particular lake in Louisville, they weren't having very good success, and they went and looked and found out it was so silted in that the deepest part of the lake was like 4 feet. So they were having a difficult time in winter having the fish hold over. The Fort Knox Lake, I just don't think was doing that well. And I think there were some access issues with it, so they just took it out. A couple of them have ended up being not very good habitat because they need to be dredged. They're silted in.
We're talking about the Kentucky Fishing and Boating Guide. It's brand new, and if the regulation has changed, it is highlighted in blue ink. But it's a good opportunity to just talk about fishing in general. We've had a warm winter this year, 2016 into 2017. Never really saw any snows, a lot of warm weather.
It's just going to make everything earlier this year. So if you're talking third week of March, you should have the white bass runs maybe at their peak instead of just beginning. Crappie spawn is going to be early. I think everything's just going to be early because it didn't get cold enough in the winter to set the normal clock.
Also talking about fishing, bordering waters. We have plenty of those. You take a look anywhere around the periphery of the state, let's say the Ohio River or Kentucky Lake, where that body of water is shared by a couple of different states. What rules apply? What license do you need? What do we need going into that?
Let's look. Sport fishing license holders shall abide by the regulation in the state from whose waters they are fishing. Wow. And when fishing in waters that are not licensed to fish, shall comply with the most restrictive regulations. So Mississippi River is a little different than Ohio. In the Ohio, anglers fishing from a bordering state's bank must follow the size and creel limits of the state where the angler is located. Okay.
You have Dale Hollow and Big South Fork, Big Sandy Tug Fork, Kentucky. There's a lot of bordering waters or a lot of shared waterways. So do you really have to consult the guide to know before you go?
Yeah, you need to know. It's where you're located. And you always default to the most restrictive reg if you don't know. So if you're in any question, just default by the most restrictive reg. See, when I fish these rivers, I rarely keep anything, so I don't think about that. If I do, it'll be one or a couple of fish. One thing on Dale Hollow is confusing is make sure when you come out of Hendricks Creek and some of those, there is a defined sign stating where the reciprocal zone is. A lot of people think, well, I'm all the way down to here and I'm all the way down to there. We have a map on our webpage of where that belongs. It's really Lilydale and above on the main lake, and then if you go up into Hendricks Creek, part of Hendricks Creek is Tennessee, part of Hendricks Creek is Kentucky. You just make sure that you know where, because I've been down there fishing with Chad Miles, our host, and been like, oh, I didn't get my one-day Tennessee. Where are we at? And be like, oh, we're right on the border. So we have to stay in Kentucky water just to make sure we're legal. So be cognizant of that when you're down there.
Well, you brought up a good point. You have a paper guide with you. It's sort of limited to what you can fit on the page. If you go online, look on your phone, do you have the option to link to other maps or get further details that you wouldn't out of the guide?
In some instances, yes. But I do know, like some of our fish location stuff, it's a little bit difficult to download on your phone, but they're working on that. They're trying to make that easier so you can just download all that onto your phone. But I think you can into your GPS units, some of the higher-end GPS units and sonar units that are combined. You can download that information directly.
As usual, Lee, now 17 years into this, you've done an outstanding job with the boating guide. Is there anything really that, apart from the regs this year, that you really like about this year's guide that's sort of new and you can hang your hat on?
Well, I do like some of the pictures in there because I took them. I love the picture on page 17 because I took that.
That is. That is pretty.
That's Trammell Creek, I believe. The one thing to draw attention to is on page 22. Something you and I have both worked on is the fishing line recycling program. On page 22, we have collection bins. It's at a lot of our more popular lakes where you can put your fishing line in.
It says monofilament line recycling bin. It looks like a white pipe, like a big water pipe.
Yes. Some people are wondering whether you could put fluorocarbon in it or not. I can't remember what our policy was on fluoro. Do you?
What I remember was if it were fishing line, put it in.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We're not going to worry about the semantics of what kind it is. What we want, more than be able to recycle it, is to get it off the bank.
Yeah, make sure that...
so that geese and ducks and turtles and whatever can't get tangled up in it.
If you're a regular visitor out here to the game farm, one of the most sad sights you'll see is a goose with one leg, or losing its leg because of fishing line wrapped around its appendages, and it cuts off the blood circulation, then they lose one of their feet. And it's sad seeing, and it's just carelessness, and, it's not that hard. My wife gets mad because in the dryer, she finds little balls of fishing line all the time from when I have to pull off 5 or 6 feet of line that has been damaged or whatever, and I wrap it up in a little ball and I stick it in my pocket. And she finds it constantly in our washer and dryer, and it makes her really mad. But I'd much rather her be mad than it endanger the life of a bird or a fish or whatnot.
Well, when you see these recycling bins, use them. They're there for a reason. If the word monofilament throws you, just read the word fishing line on there and put it in.
Put it in there, yes.
It's better in there, whatever it is, than laying on the bank.
No doubt.
I like what you have put in here, Lee, about fish identification. This will show what I don't know, but are walleye and sauger caught in the same waters traditionally?
No.
Because I could say, which fish...
Some, like in Cumberland River below the dam at Wolf Creek, you'll see them both run. But mostly sauger is a river fish, and walleye is both a river and a lake fish. And they have some overlap, but not a ton.
A lot of fish look alike. A lot of fish look a lot alike.
The sauger just has a much more distinctive black band. They tend to be much smaller than walleye and more cigar-shaped.
What page are we on to look at all that?
19. So
when you look at page 19, and it goes on for a couple of pages. So on page 19, where you have fish identification, that's handy. Now, granted, the fish on this page are all the same size. In reality, they may be pounds and many inches apart. But to look at them, you could say, how would I ever know? But in the real world, it's not as hard. But what are some of the hardest fish, you think, to differentiate?
Hybrids. Hybrid striped bass, and white bass are the most difficult.
How about a walleye? How about a sauger?
I don't think they're that bad. Because the sauger, if you notice, the saddle-like blotches on the sauger are much more distinctive. And again, sauger rarely get as big as walleye in Kentucky. And most of the time they're more of a tubular shape than walleye.
The clock is ticking. We'll be back to wrap it up on the all-new Fishing and Boating Guide for the state of Kentucky. Plus, still to come, we'll have a special look at a celebrated spring holiday, Arbor Day. Sure signs spring is taking root. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. Charlie Baglan on Kentucky Afield Radio, back with our final few with editor Lee McClellan, a name you know well from Kentucky Afield magazine. The section on fish identification. These look like photographs of fish. Are they, or are they paintings?
Those are Rick Hill paintings.
I thought they were Rick Hill paintings. When you look at them, if you open up page 19, 20, 21, they look like the real thing. What special advice is in this guide that shouldn't be overlooked? And I was hoping you might bring up the subject of threatened and endangered fish, darters, that sort of thing.
If you look on page 20, these are the threatened and endangered species. And if people collecting bait should happen upon one of these in some of these streams, you need to release them. Especially the tuxedo darter, the relic darter, the pale zone shiner, the Cumberland darter, and the black-side dace. Is illegal to take these fish species and utilize them for any purpose, including as live bait for fishing.
Where are you fishing this year, Lee? Everywhere?
Yeah, I want to get back to Kentucky Lake real bad. Hope to go down below the dam here soon on Cumberland. I really want to fish some more small lakes with my kayak.
TV show does a lot of that. They absolutely love it. Where can we get a copy of the guide?
Anywhere that sells fishing licenses. You can also request one by calling 1-800-858-1549, or you can download one and a PDF version on the website and print it off yourself.
Good luck this spring.
I appreciate it very much.
Great information to keep you legal and loving it for the fishing and boating season all across Kentucky. We're up to a point now in the show where we pay special attention to the fact that many people were fooled into believing that spring had sprung as early as February. Were you one of those? Out mowing your lawn, dragging out the patio furniture, grilling out? The spring equinox this year, March 20th. April 7th this year is Kentucky's Arbor Day. That is usually the first week in April. That's when our climate here in Kentucky is poised for the best start to the growing season. Not some warm day in January or February. We go back 15 or so years with this, an audio archive of the early days of Kentucky Afield Radio. A well-rooted tradition. Next on Kentucky Afield Radio. Trees, a common sight in the Commonwealth. We climb trees, we enjoy their shade. Trees give us wood and provide food and shelter for many animals. And the list goes on. If a tree were paid for the services a tree provides, then money would surely have to grow on trees, because they are just that valuable. We may as well have a holiday for trees, and we do. Christmas tradition holds that we cut down a tree, but on Arbor Day, we are called to plant.
Well, I think one of the most important objectives of Kentucky's Arbor Day is just to bring an awareness.
Sarah Gracie is an urban forester with the Kentucky Division of Forestry.
Kentucky has very rich woodlands, and we're one of the most biodiverse states in America.
We're at Cove Spring Park and Nature Preserve, not far from the Kentucky River in Franklin County. Sarah tells us that the purpose of Arbor Day isn't to create forest or to restore habitat lost to development or any other goal great and gallant.
From school children to teachers, community leaders, our mayors, to private landowners. You know, that farmer may be thinking of converting a pasture to a woodland, or it may encourage city council to set aside some money to purchase a park like we're standing in today, just to bring an awareness of how important our natural resources are to everybody.
I think that one of the most important things that Arbor Day does is help people develop an appreciation for trees.
Dan Feigert is a wildlife biologist with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife.
When I was in second grade, I planted a pine tree in our family's yard. We got a free tree at school and took it home and planted it. I think my family moved 3 times the time I was in high school, and we carried that tree with us every time. Just like growing a garden, you appreciate the food more. By growing the tree, you appreciate forests more. I really believe that. I think in cities, planting trees helps a lot of ways. It helps people, they feel better if it's a greener environment.
Arbor Day originated where there essentially were no trees, Nebraska. The year was 1872. It was estimated that more than 1 million trees were planted on that first local Arbor Day. Today, National Arbor Day is observed on the last Friday of April, but a number of state Arbor Days are still held to coincide with the best tree planting weather. In Kentucky, that's the first Friday in April. Unlike the Great Plains, Kentucky does have trees. About half of our landmass is covered with them, about 12 million acres, and these woodlands hold about 120 different kinds of trees. Foresters use the term mixed mesophytic to describe Kentucky's woodlands. What that means is something we can contrast to the forest of the far north. Forests there may be comprised of only spruce or hemlock trees, but in the warmer, deeper south, Kentucky forests grow a lot of different things. And this diversity, Sarah and Dan agree, makes for a greater diversity in all that lives there.
Everybody should plant a different tree. And you want that diversity out there. You want some trees that are pines or evergreen type trees that are going to provide the more winter type cover. You want other trees that are like your oaks that are producing the hard mast that wildlife feed on. They're all important, and it's good that people plant a variety of trees.
There's not just one magic tree. The reason you don't want to plant one tree is it can have a bad trait, or you could have another tree species that might be susceptible to an insect or disease. Look at the turn of the century when Dutch elm disease came into North America, and whole communities were planted in elms, and whole communities were left treeless after Dutch elm disease went by.
Part of what the Kentucky Division of Forestry does is work with people for tree management plans on their private property. Soil studies can help determine what will grow there best in conjunction with what the landowner wants. That may be timber sales in the future or wildlife now. While the Division of Forestry and Department of Fish and Wildlife do their share of tree planting, from the backwoods to Main Street, it's a job that lets everyone dig in.
Many cities, from small to large, in Kentucky celebrate an actual Arbor Day event.
Arbor Day celebrations have taken root around the world as well as here at home.
Events in Kentucky alone can plant nearly 500,000 trees each year. Event organizers recognize that at the moment a tree goes into the dirt, wildlife and woodland appreciation goes into action. And with a little luck, we can watch it grow, too. To learn more, log on to arborday.org. Kentucky Afield Radio is a broadcast service of the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, your partner in the great outdoors.
Kentucky Afield Radio, that's the way it used to be. The best time of the year is here, springtime. Thanks to Lee McClellan for stopping by to discuss the fishing and boating guide. We are out of time. This is Charlie Baglan, inviting you to join us in a week, and we'll go inside outdoors again here on Kentucky Afield Radio.